Hey everybody, so I'd like to give some bit of words of wisdom here in regards to living long and eating and taking care of people around you while judging or making good judgments. Okay, so it has to do with eating. Okay, eating. Now, if you notice nowadays, people are eating, all right, and what they're eating, there's not enough for everybody. For example, say you eat a cow. A lot of people eat beef or a lot of that sort of animal. They like to have a bit of steak. Think about how much beef there is for everybody. If everybody was to have it every day, there's not enough. So, hence you get people not making it far in life, like living a long life. Whereas, you got this person in England who's 116 years old who's eating fish and chips every day. Why? Well, there's plenty of potatoes, isn't there? And there's plenty of fish, isn't there? So this guy's living, eating it every day, and he's living like myself. Though I'm not into fish and chips. All right, I'm more of a rice person. You look, there's plenty of rice. Okay, but I've been having difficulties of what to mix with it. I'm thinking, chicken gets a bit boring sometimes, but you know, I'm saying this. I'm saying that whoever's listening to this, think about what you're having and look up um, the yearly global, how much is harvested per year, and you look up to see how much there is. You calculate it if there's going to be enough for everybody to go around. That way you know what you're having is going to be enough for everybody else to have. That way you can have the whole world working for you. Whereas if you have something that's not enough for everybody, you only have that small amount working for you. And not even, like, it's not going to be working if it's not going to be enough for everybody, is it? So thus you're going to be, facing the conflicts in the life. And this is why so many bad things are happening around the world, because everybody's miscalculating, they're misjudging the way, miscalculating their intake. They're not calculating it at all. They're not accounting for everybody. People are listening to these indoctrinations of these ancient people and these scriptures that are telling them, that this is good and this is bad, but them scriptures haven't accounted for anything. They don't give in calculations. You can't go around blind, with a blind, eating blindly without any calculations and any outlook to life to see if that's going to benefit you. Okay? Now, it just so happens to be that there is way more food than people would eat alone that is harvested every year, all right, which amounts to the animals having to get involved, all right, to eating. But there has to be a crop or some food, a specific crop to eat from, in being specific, in being consistent, and then in knowing what to expect. All right, if you really want to get, full on specific. If not, you can say you can work it out during the week, and if you don't want to have the same food every day, if you're not, into that sort of thing, you can say, you can just work it out in the week and work out the calculations on, by looking up the yearly global, how much there is globally, the statistics on how much is harvested yearly, and then you can work out, and you can have those. You can you account for the global population is meant to be 8 billion. I say it hasn't risen a billion people in 10 years. There's no way it's risen over a billion people in 10 years. Imagine that. In the 10 years before that, supposedly it's gone up another billion. When there's all these wars around, And there's all these people dying. They don't know how many people are dying. They're not being registered. In some countries, some places not even allowed to go to. And as if they're going to be telling people, you know, you just can't be certain for those statistics, okay? So anyway, back to the calculating. So you calculate for around 7 billion people, right? You say, you look up the yearly global harvest of the ingredients which, you know, of certain food groups. So you say, you know, rice it yields around 500 million tonnes per year. And you can say, okay, 1 kilo of rice per day multiplied by 365 days through 7 billion people equals, you know, you do 7 times 365, 369, 12 times 2, that equals around, you know, 2 billion tonnes or something. 2 billion tonnes of rice. Now, you can see there's not enough that's being harvested at the moment for everybody to eat that. So there's not enough to go around if you're all to eat a kilo per day. And that's what I eat. But you've got to remember with rice that it's a grain. That not all those grains are planted, but a lot maybe sprout that should have been planted, that haven't been planted, that could be planted, and you could get much larger crops. And also that there are crops out there that haven't been harvested, because you've got to think about how much is not being harvested and not being weighed. What's being weighed is what makes it to the shelves, and most of the stuff makes it to the shelves, all right? But there's a lot that doesn't, and there's a lot that's not harvested. And if you don't know, jasmine rice, for example, it was only found growing in Thailand not so long ago, in like 50 years ago or something, or 70 years ago. Someone came across the crop of jasmine rice in Thailand, and nobody knew it was there. So you could imagine how many other crops are out there. So, you know, you account for that too. So I've sort of accounted for that. But yeah, you go to other foods, you know, potatoes are about 500 million tonnes per year. And, you know, you got your sweet potatoes at 250 million tonnes per year. And then you got wheat's at around 500 million tonnes a year too. More, it's probably up around 700 million tonnes. You got corn, maize, it's around 1 billion tonnes. That's meant to be like the largest one. I don't know if they're weighing the cob. If they're weighing the cob, it's stupid, because you don't eat the cob. You know, so if they're saying it's the biggest crop and they're not even weighing, and they're weighing the cob, they're not accounting just for the grain, but it's very stupid. So if they are, then that takes away a lot of weight there. So, you know, that probably would leave around 300 million tonnes or maybe 400 million tonnes. You know, and you got your various other potatoes or tuberous vegetables eaten in Africa, such as the cassava, which is around, well, it's not that much, it's around probably 100 million tonnes or something in that regard. And you got tomatoes around 200 million tonnes, bananas or plantains are around another 200 million tonnes. Each fruit that grows on the trees is about 60 million tonnes. Like, you got the apples, there's around 60 million tonnes of apples, there's around 60 million tonnes of oranges, there's around 60 million tonnes of mangoes, there's around, and each fruit, like tree fruit, it seems to follow that. It's around 60 million tonnes. And then you got your leafy green vegetables are around the same. You know, you got around 60 million tonnes of cabbage. So if you work it out and you make sure you're having, you know, a decent amount, that if you were to have that amount, that everybody else can have that amount too, that there's enough for everybody to have, rather than, you know, sitting down to a big thing of meat, and there's not much meat that's being harvested per year. You think about beef, for example, cows. There's about 1 billion cows, or 1.5 billion cows, right? I'm not sure if they're all bulls, if they're all like harvestable as food. But it takes around a year for them to grow up again, for them to be. So they've got to give birth, and then say in the end you're not really getting much there. And it's the same with pigs. You know, people eat the pork. There's only around 1 billion pigs. Each pig you get around maybe 50 kilos to 60 kilos of meat, and then you got to make sure there's enough for them to grow up, and it takes around 6 months to grow up, and it's not the same with food. There's not crops constantly growing, and you know what I mean. And there's not really much that gets. It's around 100 million tons of pork, and that's the biggest one. Pork is like the biggest one. So you can imagine other ones are around probably 100 million too, around probably 90 million. Chicken, it's probably around the same. So they're in the low areas. Maybe that's why people saying a plant-based diet is better. Plant-based diet's meant to be better, but you gotta be wise about it. You can't go around saying, yeah, you're on a plant-based diet and you begin eating raw vegetables. How's that going to digest in your belly? You're not going to give a baby raw vegetables, are you? You gotta cook them if you're going to eat vegetables. I don't eat vegetables like myself. I'm surviving just off rice. I enjoy the carbs, but specific carbs. I don't eat potatoes. I notice they don't really digest that good. They taste alright, but the body, I can't be strong off eating potatoes. Rice, I can be strong off eating rice. The body fills out, it becomes strong, alright? So rice is the main food basically eaten in the world. It's the main staple crop, But certain grain, like I've specified basmati for birds, the medium grain for people, there's a certain way to cook it, So you got to weigh all these things up too. You cook with the lid off, not on, Or I cook with the lid off, if you want to cook with it on, but I don't cook with the lid on because it suppresses the food. It doesn't give it room to breathe. So I feel if you're doing that and you eat of that, your surroundings are going to be suppressed. You can't be free. So there's going to be always something trying to bring you down and suppressing you, right? So, if you're going to cook something, put the lid off and let it cook, or at least afterwards take the lid off, or have a little steam hole or something, so at least something's going up there. Anyway, so the main point of this was to get the message to get people counting how much food, calculating for everybody in the world, so that they're accounting for everybody, not just themselves. Okay, seeing people starving in Gaza and that, there's a lot of starvation in this area. You know why? Well, one of the main foods they eat in that whole area is lamb. Imagine a baby lamb. Can you imagine how many baby lambs there are for everybody to eat in the world? Imagine. There's not many little baby lambs. You only get like 10 to 12 kilos of meat off a baby lamb. And they're eating it. And they have this day per year where they slaughter it, and then it's meant to be a religious thing. But, if anybody out there is, is of that, just think that what it says about the masjid and al-haram, and why it tries to use haram in another way to say something's bad, but then all of a sudden it's saying it in another way to say it's good too. Like forbidden's good, like it's holy because it's forbidden. But it's saying that other things are haram, but that's not wholly forbidden, that you should go to it. But it's saying that this Masjid al-Haram is the holy sanctified place, and it tells you to go there. So you got to really think like, what's going on here? You know, something suspicious. Like you can't be trying to have two meanings of one word and saying it's okay in this sense, but it's not okay in the other sense. If that's the case, they might as well be naming it Masjidul Halal, but they don't. Or saying that the bad thing's halal, not haram, and telling you to stay away from that, but that's not. It's not. All right, so you got to be very careful in that regard. And you know, if you look at all the religious books, you know, if you don't want to, just take it from me. You just have a quick type in on the AI. It'll tell you. I've been through them myself. They all mention the ruminants, these animals with the horns. And what's wrong with that? With the horns, the devil has horns. It's depicted. This evil creature. So the evil. And if you look, the people that are in these books, they're eating of these creatures. And if you read these books, it's not all happy stories in these religious books. You know, I opened the Bible years ago thinking I was going to begin reading this great book of wisdom and righteous, upright, instructions to be a better person and some great happy thing. Nah, as soon as I opened it, there was murder and war and disasters and these prophets, and the only food they eat throughout all those stories are those creatures. They're always eating of these ruminants. God tells them, it says that God tells them to sacrifice a goat, a ram, and then they go and worship the cow or the calf. And then they refer to Jesus as the Lamb of God. And, all this, and it's all about those creatures. And they all eating of it. And you can see all the conflicts they go through in all those, in that whole book, in all those stories. From each prophet to the next. And they're all in disasters and conflicts and with their families and it's horrible. And you can see that, the moral of the story is just don't be the same as them. Alright? Maybe be the other way, So you can see that whoever's authored those books, they're trying to tell you something. There's some wise things in there too, but you got to remember that, there's a message that is trying to get through. Maybe someone was trying to get through a message, or just that's what they were going through. But at least if you listen to me, that's all they eat, and that's all what happens to them. And the book was like it was a tragedy in the end, But you can get some good things out of it. But yeah, just those main creatures, it's very suspicious. And then you got the Hindu people that, the cow's in there too as the main one, but it says it's holy and, and this and that, but it says not to kill it. But yet they're killing other creatures that are in the same category as the cow. They're killing goats and lambs and all that, and it's the same thing because it's a ruminant as well. It's in the same category as the cow. So there's a great contradiction there. And, why is it that people go to drink the milk of an animal? That milk is designed for that creature. It's not designed for people. People, okay. There's this whole thing about calcium and people are trying to be careful, and I get that. I can forgive a person for trying to be healthy. I really can, but once you realize that that milk is not designed for your body, you can't drink it anymore. I realized that years ago. I can't now. I can't. I've got to try to find other ways to, honest ways to be healthy and strong. And I'm trying. I'm really trying. Like every day is my main focus. And I know that not everything's perfect right now, but someday it can be. But if you work to it and you keep trying, someday it can be perfect. But right now, it's not. There's so much difficulty around, but the only way for it to get better is for you to try to make it better. Is for you to, change the routine. Listen, change the habit, and begin having other things to get that effect. And know that if you're really trying for it, if you really are, it's only fair that you're going to find what you're looking for. Okay? And you got justice. You're standing on something. You're standing on business in looking for what you want, have the want for, the knowledge for, that you know something. You're not just blindly going to something because you want to be healthy, or maybe because you say it's a taste nice. No, but you're going something to have something because you've justified it. You're what is it? Being vigilant. You've justified your meal, so you've got to have it, and you won't rest until you've got what you're looking for, and you want answers. That why is it this way? Why have you been brought up to have that which is forbidden, and it's damaging your body? And if there is something that's not very nice right now, everybody's there's a lot of bad things going on, and you got to ask, why is that way? Who made it that way? Why is it? You got to take charge and change it. The only way to do that is by getting busy and purchasing other things, doing your homework, not just eating and being as if you know everything already. Because, most people are that way now. They're going around as if they know everything. And then they get sick and they go to a doctor and they start whinging to this doctor, and the doctor gives them drugs, and they can't see what's wrong. They only go on by their certificate at their university. They don't really know what's wrong. And the person has the drug but continues having the same thing that makes them sick, and they're never cured, and then they pass away on those drugs. They don't pass away naturally. That's an unnatural death. You want to pass away of natural causes. You want to go, peacefully with your loved ones around, and the ability to still be able to walk around and do things. And when it's time, the time's up, you can lay in your bed and you can rest, and you can tell your wife that it's your time. You can say your goodbyes and go, and that's it. None of this accidents and being in a hospital and people putting needles to put people to death with morphine and all this nonsense. No, it's got to end. So yeah. So accounting and calculating for the ingredients that you're having, so that everybody else can have enough, to make sure that what you're having, there's enough for everybody else to have as well. And if you're always having of that amount, to know that there's enough for everybody else to have, then you're going to make it long in life, and you're going to die of natural causes, and you're never going to go to see that doctor again for them drugs, which are called medications. You're never going to go there again. Paths will open up, answers will come, and all the conflicts will cease in your life and everybody else's life, because this knowledge has to manifest for everybody. Know that if you do that, someone else is going to be affected, namely the person that's coming after you, the youth, because that's the example who you're setting for. That's who are going to benefit the most, and they're going to come up after you, and then you're going to be there as the father, as a mentor, and they're going to know one day that they got it to that place because you put in the effort and you left behind for them something good, some honesty and some hard work and effort for them to benefit from, and then they can grow up and be strong. Not as before, when the adults, they didn't know, and they committed to these mistakes, this blind, affected by the evil. I don't condemn people. The evil is that which is to condemn, and it affects the people, but they were affected. They didn't know, and thus the people in the past that came up after them, they suffered. But it has to end someday. It has to end for the good to be. It's only right. It has to. And that's why I'm putting this out, because I believe that. Okay? And I've started years ago to try to make my life better. And I've made it to this stage now where I've basically got, if you know who I am, if you saw my post before, you know who I am, and you know what sort of things I know and what things I put up. And I'm basically at the point now where I've got these answers put together, and I really need to start to get things happening and get people on the ball rolling, and people on, need to get some action happening, and there's some other people involved too. I need to really, get this message out. So make in respect of that change, and know that it's only fair that the bad has to go away for the good to be someday. It's only right. Otherwise, it's hell forever on the earth. Okay, so think about that, and accounting for the ingredients which you're having, so that there's going to be enough for everybody else to have. Okay. So